Watching television today is a lot different than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It used to be that if you didn't see something when it first aired, your only hope was to catch a rerun sometime later on. If it was something you really particularly wanted to see, then maybe you would set your VCR to record it. That was still hardly a universal common practice. And because of those things, it was pretty well understood that if you missed something when it was first on, you'd have to hear about it from your friends sometime over the next few days. But today, in the days of DVR and of Netflix, expectations have changed. That makes things difficult for the blogs and the websites that are dedicated to talking about television. So they can no longer just assume that everyone who wanted to see something has already done so. See, people today will get legitimately angry if someone talks about plot developments, character developments, events that they haven't seen yet. They don't want their viewing experience to be spoiled. So it's become kind of common practice in television and in movie reviews. And these things that are going to talk about some of the important details, it's common for them to put in large letters or a disclaimer saying, spoiler alert. It's a way of saying, if you don't want to know what happens, don't read any further. And much to the dismay and frustration of some people, I'm not one of those people. And if a game is in progress, tell me what the score is. Tell me what's going on. If I know that there's a place where I can find out how an episode ends or what happens to a certain character, how the book's primary conflict is resolved, it's really, really hard for me to avoid the temptation to go find out. I don't always cheat and find out what the ending is first, but I do it enough to drive some of my friends, even my wife, a little bit crazy. Sometimes in life it is all about the journey. Sometimes it is about the discovery that takes place, the learning and the growing. The learning and going through those things and getting those things that only come through experience and time. Other times it is better to know how things end. Sometimes it is highly desirable to know, whether for better or worse, how everything turns out in the end. And that's what we encounter in our reading today from the Revelation of St. John. See, in a very real way, God gives us a glimpse of the end. He gives us a sneak peek of the final outcome for us, for the church, for God's enemies, for His entire creation. He gives us this glimpse. He gives us this spoiler in order to help us, to strengthen and comfort us as we are still going through and living out the details of the story. See, we get to live our lives with the ending in mind. We experience and we live the plot as it winds and curves through all its various ups and downs and its joys and its tragedies, all the while knowing that in the end, we win. God wins the battle, and we, the church, share in that victory. And the picture that we're given is one of a wedding, a royal wedding. However, the description isn't quite like the weddings at the end of a Disney princess movie. And in his letter to the Ephesians, Paul describes how the church is the bride of Christ. He describes the love that Christ has for his bride, saying that he loves her that he might present her in all her glory, having no spot, no wrinkle, any other blemish. Presenting her that she might be holy and blameless. Really, that's an amazing thing. because we know that we are full of spots and wrinkles. We're stubborn. We're difficult. We whine and we complain, we cheat and we rebel. And still, because of the power of His love, we are presented as radiant and beautiful. In the book of Ephesians, the image is absolutely one of a storybook wedding. In Revelation it's a bit different. See, what John describes as the royal city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. And the city is beautiful. It's brilliant. It's unimaginably magnificent. It says there are 12 gates which are always open, and 12 precious stones that make up the city's foundation. Now these represent the Old Testament people of God and the New Testament people of God. Verse 21 tells us, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each of the gates made of a single pearl. And the street of the city was pure gold, transparent as glass. As John looks, he also sees that in the city, in this new Jerusalem, there is no temple. He says there's no longer any need for a place for God's people to gather in His presence because God and the Lamb are its temple. The city is their dwelling place. They are ever present. They are the focus and the center of all worship. Likewise, the city that John sees has no sun or moon, for the Lamb is its lamp, and the glory of the splendor of God shines bright. It says there is no night, for it is only day. Just as Scripture tells us that God is light and in Him there is no darkness at all, so it will be for all eternity. Now put all together, like so much of what's found in the book of Revelation, these are images that stretch the imagination. The glory and the wonder of eternity, of the dwelling place that is awaiting us, is beyond what our words can describe, and it's beyond what our minds can comprehend. But we get a glimpse. And this glimpse is a blessed thing. Like we said before, sometimes it's better to know how things end. And as it applies to this world, as it applies to this life, I think we can agree that's most certainly the case. See, as we live now, we are the church militant. Right? Each and every day we are engaged in spiritual warfare. Each and every day we do battle with Satan, with the world, with our own sinful natures. And all of these things seek to tear us away from God and into destruction. And as much as we might wish that it wasn't the case, many times we lose those battles. We give in to temptation. We stumble. We fall. We sin. Day after day, we receive first-hand confirmation that while the spirit might be willing, the flesh is weak. As we deal with our own sinfulness, as we look around and see the world and its rejection, its hatred of God, it can be disheartening. It can lead us to doubt, to wonder what's going to happen next. We wonder sometimes what the future holds for God's people. We wonder sometimes what the future holds for the church. How long can it survive the way that things are going? We get discouraged. We should never give up. See, our names are written in the Lamb's book of life, written with the blood that He has sacrificed on the cross. We have assurance that we are His because we have been marked with the cross. He put His name on us in our baptisms, and by it we belong to Him. By grace, through the faith worked in us by the Holy Spirit, we cling to His promises. The glimpse that we are given of the end, of being able to know the end of the story, it gives us hope when times are tough. It gives us encouragement that when we get discouraged, we have something to look forward to. It gives us the strength to carry on when things might otherwise look hopeless. The sound of Martha's voice on the other end of the telephone, it always brought a smile to her pastor's face. She wasn't just one of the oldest members of the congregation, but she was one of the most faithful. She was one of those women who just seemed to ooze faith, hope, and love wherever she went. At this time, though, there seemed to be something unusual in her words. She said, "Pastor, can you stop by this afternoon? I need to talk." She said, "Of course, I'll be there about 3. It didn't take him long to discover the reason for what he'd only sensed in her voice on the phone. As they sat talking in her small living room, Martha shared the news that the doctor had just discovered a previously undetected tumor. He says, "I probably have about 6 months to live." Her words were naturally serious, yet there was a definite calm about her. The pastor started to respond, started to say, "I'm so sorry," but before he could finish, Martha interrupted. He said, "Don't. The Lord has been good. I've lived a long life. I'm ready to go." But I do want to talk to you, though, about my funeral. I've been thinking about it, and there are things that I know that I want. The two talked quietly for a long time. They talked about Martha's favorite hymns. They talked about passages that she wanted read at her funeral. They talked about the many memories that they had shared over the years. When it seemed that they had covered just about everything, Martha looked up with a twinkle in her eye and added, "One more thing. When they bury me, I want my Bible, my old Bible in the one hand, and a fork in the other." Fork. As a pastor for years, he thought he'd heard just about everything, but this one caught him by surprise. And so he asked her, "Martha, why do you want to be buried with a fork?" He said, "Well, I've been thinking about all the church dinners and banquets that I've gone to over the years. Now, I couldn't begin to count them all, but one thing sticks in my mind. At those really nice get-togethers, when the meal was almost finished, someone would come by to collect the dirty plates. Sometimes, at the best ones, somebody would lean over my shoulder and whisper, 'You can keep your fork.' You know what that meant? It meant that dessert was coming. It didn't mean a cup of Jell-O or pudding or even a dish of ice cream. You don't need a fork for that. No, it meant the good stuff, like chocolate cake or apple pie. And when they told me I could keep my fork, I knew that the best was yet to come." That's exactly what I want people to talk about at my funeral. Well, they can talk about all the good times that we had together. That would be nice. But when they walk by my casket and look at my pretty blue dress, I want them to turn to one another and say, "Why the fork?" That's what I want you to say. I want you to tell them that I kept my fork because the best is yet to come. We said that the image that John saw was one of a royal wedding. Now, in the Disney movies, in the princess stories, the story usually ends with, "And they lived happily ever after." But if you've been married for more than an hour, you know that it's not quite that simple. Right? The realities of life means there are still conflicts to resolve, there are children to raise, there are disappointments you're going to have to face. But this glimpse of the bride of Christ assures us that truly, for a child of God, the best is yet to come. We will live happily ever after. And it's not only the hope we have, but the assurance that we have. Because we've read the spoilers. We've read and we've been given a glimpse of how it all will end. May this glimpse of our future give you hope and encouragement both now and always. May it give you hope and encouragement in Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith. Amen.